Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting straight into something pretty fundamental for AI, how we actually judge progress. We're talking leaderboards, specifically Chatbot Arena.
Right. These rankings, they look definitive, don't they? Like, here's the best model, full stop.
Exactly. But what if that nice, clean hierarchy is, well, hiding something? Maybe a reality that's a bit more complex, maybe even less innovative than it seems.
That's the core question, isn't it? For anyone trying to really get a handle on where AI is going, beyond just the headlines, we need to look under the hood of these leaderboards. Are they genuinely tracking fundamental steps forward, or are there other dynamics at play that might be giving us a slightly skewed picture?
So to help us really unpack this, we're diving into a paper called The Leaderboard Illusion. It takes a really critical look at Chatbot Arena.
Which, as the paper points out, really exploded onto the scene in 2023. It became the kind of go-to place for comparing these big, open-ended AI models.
Yeah, and its whole user-driven thing that was seen as a big improvement at the time.
Absolutely. The idea was to move past those, let's say, more rigid academic tests, the multiple choice stuff.
Right.
Chatbot Arena let real users throw in their own prompts, compare anonymous responses. It was meant to capture how these things work in the wild, basically, and evolve as the models got smarter.
Sounds great in theory, powerful democratic way to see what's what.
Hmm.
But the leaderboard illusion argues that its very success, its influence, might be causing some, let's call them unintended side effects.
Exactly.
So our deep dive today is all about getting into the nuts and bolts. How does Chatbot Arena actually work? What are the limitations the paper brings up? And crucially, what does this all mean for how we understand real innovation in AI?
And we'll try to stick close to the paper's more, let's say, academic points here, especially when it talks about what really counts as a genuine breakthrough versus just, well, climbing the ladder.
Okay, so where do we start? What's the foundational issue here?
But one of the first things the paper hits on is this classic idea, Goodhart's law.
Ah, right. When a measure becomes a target.
It ceases to be a good measure.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the worry is that this intense focus on getting that top spot on Chatbot Arena could push developers to, well, game the system.
Game the system how?
By focusing on tactics that specifically boost their rank within Chatbot Arena, maybe pulling resources away from the harder, more fundamental research that leads to broad, real-world improvements.
So the leaderboard itself starts warping development priorities, chasing the number, not necessarily solving the bigger problems.
That's the risk the paper highlights. It becomes about winning the arena, perhaps more than advancing AI generally.
Okay, so how might this actually be happening? The paper mentions willful engagement and preferential policies. Who are they talking about?
They specifically point towards some of the big industry players, Meta, Google, OpenAI, Amazon are mentioned. The argument is that these companies might be interacting with the arena in ways that give them an edge.
An edge beyond just having a better model.
Potentially, yes. The paper suggests these factors could lead to optimizing for the leaderboard score rather than necessarily achieving fundamental innovation. And they dig into some specific practices that could be driving this illusion.
Okay, let's get into those specifics. What's the first major concern?
A really big one is undisclosed private testing. The research suggests there's an unstated policy allowing certain large labs to test many model versions privately before showing anything publicly.
Many versions. Like how many?
Well, the paper gives some pretty stark examples. They observed meta testing up to, I think it was 27 private models in just 1 month before they released Llama 4. Google apparently had 10 private ones around the same time.
27. Wow. That's a lot of trial runs happening behind the curtain.
It is, and crucially, there seems to be no rule saying all these private tests have to be made public, or even that the model they finally release matches the version people access through the API.
So wait, they can test, say, dozens of variations, find the one that happens to score highest on the arena, and it just release that one.
That's what the paper calls the best of N strategy. You run N trials privately, pick the winner, and that's the score the public sees.
Okay, I can see how that might instate scores. But what's the technical issue with that?
The authors argue it directly violates a key assumption of the Bradley-Terry model that's the statistical engine Chatbot Arena uses for its rankings.
The BT model?
Yeah, Bradley-Terry. It works by comparing pairs of models, but it assumes the sampling of models for comparison is, well, unbiased. If you're secretly testing many variants and only putting your best foot forward.
Then the sampling isn't unbiased anymore. You're selectively reporting.
Exactly. The whole statistical basis of the ranking gets undermined.
So what looks like a big leap forward on the leaderboard might just be statistical luck from running lots of tests.
It could be, yeah. The paper actually ran simulations. They found that testing just 10 variants could artificially inflate the top score by around 100 ELO points.
100 points, that's significant on those scales.
It is, and that inflation isn't necessarily reflecting true, robust innovation in the model itself. It's more like a statistical artifact of the selection process.
Like a fishing expedition, basically. Keep casting lines until you get a big one.
That's a good analogy. And the paper's authors didn't just simulate this, they actually tested it themselves on Chatbot Arena.
Oh, really? What did they find?
They deployed a few private versions of their own models and confirmed they could get better scores just by picking the best performing variant from their private tests. It worked in practice.
And did everyone have this private testing ability?
Well, interestingly, during the period they observed, the paper notes that no academic labs seemed to be conducting this kind of private testing.
So that suggests maybe not everyone knew about this possibility, or perhaps didn't have the same level of access or resources to do it?
It certainly raises questions about equal access and whether the playing field is truly level. Is the progress we see reflecting democratized innovation, or is it tilted?
Right. That really does suggest an uneven playing field. And you mentioned another factor, something about data access.
Yes, exactly. So we've got the potential score skewing from private testing, but then there's the question of who benefits most from the data generated by Chatbot Arena itself.
The user prompts and the votes, you mean?
Precisely. That feedback is incredibly valuable for training and fine-tuning models, and the paper's analysis suggests a significant disparity here too.
How so?
They estimate that the major proprietary providers, again, thinking OpenAI, Google receive a much larger slice of the pie when it comes to user prompts and comparison results.
Compared to who?
Compared to, say, OpenWay or fully open source models, their numbers were pretty striking. OpenAI and Google each got around 20% of the test prompts, they estimated, but all the fully open source models combined only about 9%.
Wow, okay. 20% each versus 9% for the entire open source group. That's a big difference. What drives that imbalance?
The paper points to a few things. First, that private testing we talked about. The more variants you test, even privately, the more prompts you naturally collect.
Ah, right. More models in the system, more interactions.
Yeah, their own experiment showed that just going from one private variant to 3 boosted their prompt collection significantly. Then there's the sampling rate.
The rate at which Chatbot Arena decides to show a particular model to users.
Yes, and the paper found this wasn't always consistent with Chatbot Arena's stated policy. Some models from Google and OpenAI apparently hit peak daily sampling rates of around 34%.
While others.
While another provider, Reka, was mentioned as having a rate as low as 3.3% for one of its models.
Okay, huge difference there too. Any other factors?
Also, just the number of models a provider hosts publicly matters, and whether they offer direct API support. API access lets them collect basically 100% of the data for their interactions.
So it sounds like the very companies potentially benefiting from private testing are also getting the lion's share of the community-generated training data. It's like a feedback loop.
That's a good way to put it, a reinforcing cycle of advantage. Which leads to the next crucial question the paper tackles.
Which is?
Does getting more of this arena-specific data actually lead to better, more generally innovative models? Or does it just make them better at playing the Chatbot Arena game?
Ah, the overfitting question. Training too much on one specific type of data.
Exactly. So they ran another experiment. They trained models with different amounts of Chatbot Arena data included.
And what happened?
Well, loading up on Arena data did significantly boost performance on Arena Hard. That's a benchmark dataset designed to be very similar to Chatbot Arena prompts, like win rates more than doubled in some cases. Huge gains there.
Okay, so training on arena data makes you better at the arena. That makes sense. But what about outside the arena?
That's the key finding. Those big gains didn't necessarily carry over to broader benchmarks, like the MMLU dataset.
MMLU tests more general knowledge, right?
Right. And on MMLU, performance sometimes even dips slightly after heavy arena training.
Interesting. So it suggests the models were learning the specific patterns and quirks of Chatbot Arena, but maybe not developing more fundamental generalizable intelligence.
It strongly suggests overfitting, yes. Learning to ace the test, but not necessarily learning the subject in a deeper way. It really makes you question what best truly means when we talk about these models, doesn't it? Are we measuring the breadth of intelligence or just performance in one specific, maybe narrow environment?
That's a really critical point for anyone trying to understand genuine progress. Because Chatbot Arena, as you said, has its own specific flavor, right? Limits on context length, maybe a user base heavy on developers, certain topics might pop up more often.
All of those factors create a specific data distribution. Excelling within that distribution is one thing, but it might not tell you everything about how innovative a model is overall, or how well it will handle completely different real-world scenarios.
So are the leaderboard rankings just showing us who's best at mastering the arena's specific environment?
It raises that possibility. Are these improvements reflecting robust general AI advances, or are they, at least partly, optimizations tailored to a very particular, potentially narrow evaluation setup?
Okay, there's another wrinkle the paper brings up, model deprecation. What's going on there?
This was quite surprising, actually. The paper found that a huge number of public models on the Arena 205 out of 243 they looked at seemed to have been silently deprecated.
Silently deprecated, meaning
Meaning they just stopped being actively included in new comparisons, but without any official announcement or clear marking on the leaderboard itself. This number was way higher than the models officially listed as retired.
wow, 2 or 5 silently removed. So the history we see on the leaderboard might not be tracking consistent comparisons over time.
That's the implication. It potentially messes with the integrity of the rankings, especially over time. Remember the Bradley Terry model?
Yeah, the ranking engine.
It kind of assumes a stable, connected network of comparisons. When models just disappear from active rotation without notice, it breaks that network.
How does it break it?
It undermines transitivity, the idea that if A beats B and B beats C, then A should probably beat C. If B or C suddenly stops being compared under evolving conditions, those indirect inferences become unreliable.
I see. The connections get broken.
Right. And the paper's simulation showed this too. If you deprecate a model just as the types of prompts users are submitting starts to change, the rankings of the model still in the arena can get distorted. They might not reflect true relative performance anymore.
And does this affect all models equally?
Apparently not. The paper notes that open weight and open source models were significantly more likely to be silently deprecated. About 2/3 of the silently deprecated models fell into that category.
So again, it seems like open models might be at a disadvantage here, making it harder to track their actual progress over time compared to proprietary ones that tend to stick around longer.
Exactly. And when a model has been deprecated for a while, its comparison history becomes sparse, which can further disconnect the comparison graph and just make the overall rankings less accurate.
Okay, so we've covered quite a few potential issues: the secret private testing, the skewed data access, the risk of overfitting to the arena, and now unreliable historical tracking due to silent deprecation. It paints a complicated picture.
It certainly complicates the simple narrative of higher rank equals better body.
So given all this, what does the Leaderboard Illusion suggest we do about it? How can we make these evaluations more trustworthy and better at fostering real innovation?
They offer some pretty concrete recommendations focused on transparency and fairness.
Like what?
First, they say, no more score retraction after private testing. If you test a variant, its score should be visible, period, and disclose how many private variants were tested in total.
Ah, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Make the whole best of N thing transparent.
Exactly. That would stop it from secretly inflating scores. Second, they suggest clear, equal limits for everyone on how many private variants can be tested for any given model release.
Leveling the playing field on that front makes sense. What about the data access?
They argue for fairer sampling. They actually point to an active sampling rule proposed by the Chatbot Arena team themselves earlier.
What does that do?
It basically prioritizes comparisons between models that haven't been compared much yet, or where the outcome is still very uncertain. It focuses the community's voting effort where it's most needed to get accurate rankings, rather than just repeatedly comparing the top models.
So more efficient and potentially fairer data collection.
That's the idea. And their final big push is just for much more overall transparency.
How so?
Regularly publish everything. Which models were tested, including all private ones, which ones have been deprecated silently or not, what the sampling rates are for each model, all on an ongoing basis.
Just open the books completely, let the community see exactly how the leaderboard is operating.
Precisely. That way, everyone can better understand the results and maybe even help improve the system over time.
Okay, those sound like sensible steps. So wrapping up our deep dive on the Leaderboard Illusion, the big picture seems to be that while Chatbot Arena was definitely an innovative idea for evaluating these complex AI models, its current form has some real challenges. Things like the hidden testing, the uneven data access, the silent deprecations. They can create a picture of progress that might not fully reflect genuine, broad innovation, and it could be disadvantaging parts of the AI community, like open source developers.
Exactly. So for you, the listener, the main takeaway here is probably to view these leaderboards with, let's say, a critical eye, a healthy dose of skepticism.
Don't just take the ranking number as gospel.
Right. They look simple, but the mechanics underneath can be complex and potentially biased. You really need to ask what's behind that number. Is it truly reflecting a fundamental leap, or is it partly an artifact of the evaluation process itself?
Understanding that difference seems vital if you really want to track meaningful progress in AI, not just leaderboard
Absolutely. Distinguishing real architectural breakthroughs from optimizations for one specific test environment.
which brings us to a final thought for you to mull over. If the main goal shifts towards winning the leaderboard, hitting that top spot,
Hmm.
are we accidentally pushing AI development towards mastering that one specific arena environment? And maybe, just maybe, neglecting the bigger, messier, more important challenges of making AI work reliably and beneficially out in the real world.
What does it mean for the future direction of AI research if our main benchmarks aren't fully capturing the kind of broad, meaningful progress we ultimately need?
It's definitely something to think about as you watch this field continue to evolve at lightning speed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.